Hey y'all, Michelle Raza here with the Finding Yourself Book Club. Today we're going to dive right into Chapter 8 of Lindsay Gibson's Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Please check out our site, www.findingyourselfsatx.com. There you can see this video. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. And remember, the first consult is always free if you'd like to talk to us. Chapter 8. How to avoid getting emotionally hooked. Getting hooked by an emotionally immature parent. It's hard to see our parents as fallible human beings. As children, we believe our parents can do anything. Although adolescence and the independence of adulthood can weaken our view of our parents as all-powerful, they don't eradicate it. Therefore, even if they aren't loving, we wishfully think that they could be if they wanted to. Certain cultural tenets also keep us from seeing our parents clearly. Most of us are instilled with beliefs such as these. All parents. But if your parents were emotionally immature, many of these statements may not be true. In this chapter, I'll help you look beneath the surface of your childhood hopes and cultural assumptions in order to see your parents more accurately. You'll be learning a new way to relate to them, so that you won't expect what they can't give. You'll learn how to protect your emotions and individuality by approaching your parents in a more neutral way, a way they can tolerate emotionally. But first, let's look at a common fantasy that often prevents people from relating to their parents in a realistic way. The fantasy that a parent will change. A common fantasy among children of emotionally immature parents is that their parents will have a change of heart and finally love them by showing concern. Unfortunately, self-preoccupied parents refuse all invitations to fulfill their part in their child's healing story. Focused on their own healing fantasy, they expect their children to make up for their childhood hurts. Forging a new relationship. The rest of this chapter explores how to handle an emotionally immature parent, as well as other people, by changing your expectations and replacing reactivity with observation. 3 key approaches will help you free yourself from getting caught up in your parents' emotional immaturity: detached observation, maturity awareness, and stepping away from your role self. Detached observation. The first step in gaining your emotional freedom is to assess whether either of your parents was emotionally immature. Given that you're still reading this book, you've probably decided that at least one of your parents fits that description. Such a parent can probably never fulfill your childhood vision of a loving parent. The only achievable goal is to act from your own true nature, not the role self that pleases your parent. You can't win your parent over, but you can save yourself. Becoming observational. When interacting with emotionally immature people, you'll feel more centered if you operate from a calm, thinking perspective rather than emotional reactivity. Start by settling yourself and getting into an observational, detached frame of mind. There are any number of ways to do this. For example, you can count your breaths slowly, tense and relax your muscle groups in a systematic sequence, or imagine calming imagery. Next, your job is to stay detached emotionally and observe how others behave, just like a scientist would. Pretend you're conducting an anthropological field study. What words would you use to describe others' facial expressions? What is their body language communicating? Does their voice sound calm or tense? Do they appear rigid or receptive? How do they respond when you try to relate? What do you find yourself feeling? Can you spot any of the emotionally immature behaviors described in chapters 2 and 3? Relatedness versus relationship. Observing allows you to stay in a state of relatedness with your parents or other loved ones without getting caught up in their emotional tactics and expectations about how you should be. Relatedness is different from relationship. In relatedness, there's communication, but no goal of having a satisfying emotional exchange. You stay in contact, handle others as you need to, and have whatever interactions are tolerable without exceeding the limits that work for you. In contrast, engaging in a real relationship means being open and establishing emotional reciprocity. If you try this with emotionally immature people, you'll feel frustrated and invalidated. As soon as you start looking for emotional understanding from such people, you won't be as balanced within yourself. It makes more sense to aim for simple relatedness with them, saving your relationship aspirations for people who can give something back. The maturity awareness approach. Once you've gotten the hang of being observational rather than relationship-oriented, you can turn your attention to maturity awareness. This approach will grant you emotional freedom from painful relationships by taking the emotional maturity of others into account. Estimating the probable maturity level of the person you're dealing with is one of the best ways to take care of yourself in any interaction. Once you peg a person's maturity level, his or her responses will make more sense and be more predictable. If you determine that the other person is showing emotional immaturity as described in chapters 2 and 3, there are 3 ways to relate to the person without getting yourself upset. 1. Expressing and then letting go. 2. Focusing on the outcome, not the relationship. 3. Managing, not engaging. Expressing and then letting go. Tell the other person that you want what you want to say in as calm and non-judgmental way as you can, and don't try to control the outcome. Explicitly say what you feel or want and enjoy that act of self-expression, but release any need for the other person to hear you or change. You can't force others to empathize or understand. The point is to feel good about yourself for engaging in what I call clear, intimate communication. Others may or may not respond how you want them to, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you express your true thoughts and feelings in a calm, clear way. The goal is achievable and within your control. Focusing on the outcome, not the relationship. Ask yourself what you're really trying to get from the other person in this interaction. Be honest. If it's your parent, do you want your parent to listen to you, understand you, regret his or her behavior, apologize to you, make amends? If your goal involves empathy or a change of heart on your parent's part, stop right there and come up with a different goal, one that's specific and achievable. Remember, you can't expect immature, emotionally phobic people to be different from how they are. However, you can set a specific goal for the interaction. Identify the specific outcome you want from each interaction and set it as a goal. Here are some examples. I express myself to my mother even though I'm nervous. I tell my parents I'm not coming home for Christmas. I ask my father to talk nicely to my children. Your goal might be just to express your feelings. This is achievable because you can ask others to listen even though you can't make them understand. Or your goal might be as simple as reaching an agreement about where the family will have Thanksgiving dinner. The key is to go into the interaction always knowing the end point you wish to arrive at. Let me be crystal clear. Focus on the outcome, not the relationship. As soon as you focus on the relationship and try to improve it or change it at an emotional level, an interaction with an emotionally immature person will deteriorate. The person will regress emotionally and attempt to control you so that you'll stop upsetting him or her. If you keep the focus on a specific question or outcome, you're more likely to contact the person's adult side. Managing, not engaging. Instead of emotionally engaging with immature people, set a goal of managing the interaction, including duration and topics. You may need to repeatedly redirect the conversation where you want it to go. Gently ease past attempts to change the topic or bait you emotionally. Be polite, but be prepared to address the issue as many times as it takes to get a clear answer. Emotionally immature people don't have a good strategy for countering another person's persistence. Their attempts at diversion and avoidance ultimately break down if you keep asking the same question. As a reminder, also manage your own emotions by observing and narrating your feelings to yourself rather than becoming reactive. Stepping out of an old role self. The ability to step back and observe not only your parent, but also your own role self is where emotional freedom begins. When you see how you've gotten stuck in a role self and are trying to make a healing fantasy come true, you can decide to do it differently. Keeping a grip on your own thoughts and feelings. The ultimate goal in any interaction with a parent or an emotionally immature person is to keep a grip on your own mind and feelings. To do this, you'll need to stay observational, noticing how you're feeling and how the other person is acting. From this perspective, you can retain your individual point of view and be more immune to the other person's emotional contagion. With parents, keeping your mind on your specific desired outcome for the interaction will help you retain an objective, observing stance no matter how they behave. It keeps you in your thinking brain instead of falling into your emotions or a fight or flight reaction. In this way, focusing on your goal for the interaction helps you hold on to your true self while old healing fantasies and role expectations are swirling around you. Being cautious about new openness. According to Murray Bowen, as a child becomes more of an individual, the emotionally immature parent's knee-jerk reaction is to do something that attempts to force the child back into an enmeshed pattern. If the child doesn't take the bait, such parents may ultimately start relating in a more genuine way. I advise caution if your parents show uncharacteristic openness in response to your adoption of an observational and goal-oriented, goal-directed approach. If they start treating you with more respect or open up a bit, you could be vulnerable to getting sucked back into your old healing fantasy. They're finally going to give me what I need. Be careful. Your inner child will always hope that your parents will finally change and offer what you've always longed for. But your job is to keep your adult outlook and continue relating to them as a separate, independent adult. At this point, you're looking for an adult relationship with them, not a recreation of parent-child dynamics, right? Summary. Our early dependence on our parents makes us seek their love and attention. However, we must step away from our childhood roles if we don't want to repeat them in our adult relationships. The maturity awareness approach will help you deal with an emotionally immature parent or any difficult, self-involved person more effectively. You'll have better results if you try to relate to your parent in a neutral way rather than trying to have a relationship. First, you need to assess your parents' level of maturity and approach interactions between the two of you from an observational perspective, focusing on thinking rather than reacting emotionally. Then you can employ the 3 steps involved in the maturity awareness approach: expressing yourself and then letting it go, focusing on the outcome rather than the relationship, and managing the interaction rather than engaging emotionally. In the next chapter, we'll explore the road to freedom from old parent-child patterns. As you read on, you'll see how good it feels to finally step out of old patterns of relating that have been ruining your life.